It was supposed to be a routine political panel on a late-night broadcast, just another televised exchange of views, tensions, and commentary. But what happened that night shocked the nation and ignited a firestorm across social media and political circles alike. Jasmine Crockett, the fiery and fearless U.S. Congresswoman from Texas known for her sharp intellect and unapologetic stance on justice, found herself at the center of an explosive controversy, this time, facing off with none other than former First Lady Melania Trump. It wasn't supposed to go that way. What began as a heated but civil discussion spiraled into chaos when Melania made a remark that many instantly called out as inflammatory, degrading, and deeply personal. Cameras captured every second of the moment when Melania, with a smug smile and a chilling calmness in her tone, insinuated live on air that Jasmine's success was a product of race-based favoritism rather than merit. The panel gasped. The anchor stuttered. But Jasmine didn't flinch. Her eyes locked onto Melania's with a gaze that could cut steel. She said nothing then, but her silence wasn't weakness. It was calculation. Less than 24 hours later, Jasmine Crockett announced through her legal team that she had filed a $100 million defamation lawsuit against Melania Trump, citing slander, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and the promotion of racial stereotypes on a national platform. The legal filing was a bombshell. It detailed how Melania's remarks weren't just offensive, they were designed to discredit, devalue, and delegitimize Jasmine's journey as a public servant and civil rights attorney. The lawsuit was more than just a personal strike back, it was a clarion call against systemic erasure, an unflinching demand for accountability in a world where black women in power are often painted as unworthy, angry, or handed success rather than having earned it. Jasmine's legal team brought forth not only the recording of the broadcast but also a timeline of past comments from Melania and affiliated right-wing commentators, showing a pattern of coded language and subtle, but dangerous, race-baiting narratives. The public response was immediate and visceral. Hashtags like #StandWithCrockett and #SueMelania began trending worldwide. Supporters from across the political spectrum, including celebrities, legal experts, and even fellow lawmakers, rallied around Jasmine. Videos resurfaced of her fiery takedowns in Congress, her impassioned speeches on justice reform, and her tireless work in underserved communities. People began to see the lawsuit not just as Jasmine's fight, but their own. Melania Trump, on the other hand, attempted to downplay the controversy, releasing a short, carefully worded statement claiming that her remarks were taken out of context and meant to inspire reflection, not offense. But the damage had been done. News outlets ran clips of the moment on repeat, dissecting every word, every smirk, every blink. Her refusal to apologize only added fuel to the fire. And then came the unexpected twist: Donald Trump himself entered the arena. In a Truth Social rant, Trump slammed Jasmine, calling her lawsuit a pathetic publicity stunt and labeling her a third-rate lawyer playing the race card. But that only backfired. Jasmine responded not with words, but with receipts, clips, cases, community leaders, and the cold facts of her professional career, reminding the world that she had earned every inch of her influence through grit, brilliance, and sheer determination. Meanwhile, legal scholars weighed in. Some speculated that Jasmine's team had a strong case, particularly under the modern interpretation of defamation laws involving public figures and the balance between free speech and malicious intent. Others noted that even if the case never reached trial, the impact had already been made. Jasmine had taken a stand. And in doing so, she forced the nation to look again at who gets to say what on air, who gets to be believed, and who gets to be insulted without consequence. The case made its way into congressional halls. During a session, several black women lawmakers wore pins with Jasmine's initials, standing silently in solidarity. A few took the floor to echo her message, warning that if people like Melania Trump could publicly degrade a sitting congresswoman without any repercussions, it set a dangerous precedent. Some even called for networks to re-examine who they allow to speak on public platforms. Behind the scenes, sources reported that Jasmine was unmoved by the pressure. She was not suing for fame, they said, she was suing for every young black girl who'd been told she was too loud, too ambitious, too angry, too lucky. Jasmine's mother, in a rare interview, said with tears in her eyes, "My daughter worked for everything she has. And now she's working for justice." By week 2, the lawsuit began to take on symbolic weight far beyond Jasmine and Melania. It became a national debate about dignity, race, public discourse, and the price of unchecked speech. Editorials flooded in from the New York Times to grassroots black-owned newspapers. People began holding forums and town halls about representation and media bias. Teachers used the clip in classrooms to teach about systemic prejudice. It was no longer just a lawsuit, it was a moment in cultural history. As the case entered preliminary hearings, Melania's legal team scrambled to file motions to dismiss. But the judge overseeing the case denied early dismissal, stating that, "The court finds reasonable merit in the plaintiff's assertion that the defendant's words may have caused measurable harm and conveyed damaging stereotypes." In that moment, Jasmine Crockett stood taller than ever before. Not because she had won the case, yet. But because she had refused to stay silent. Because she had transformed a moment of insult into a movement of truth. And because in a world that too often tells black women to sit down, be grateful, and stay quiet, she stood up, demanded justice, and refused to be diminished by anyone, not even a former First Lady. Jasmine Crockett's lawsuit against Melania Trump isn't just a legal case, it is a defining moment in the fight for dignity, accountability, and truth in American political discourse. Because when a black woman in power is publicly undermined by racially charged rhetoric on national television, and she stands up not only for herself but for generations of women who have been diminished, questioned, or dismissed, that moment becomes much larger than an insult, it becomes a movement. The $100 million defamation suit filed by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett marks a bold and unprecedented confrontation against a deeply embedded culture of coded racism and elite privilege, and in doing so, it not only holds Melania Trump accountable for the shocking and derogatory live comment she made, implying that Crockett's success was not earned but handed to her because of her race, but it also challenges the broader narrative that attempts to invalidate black excellence by wrapping it in false narratives of affirmative action or political tokenism, and what Jasmine has done is channel the weight of that insult and transform it into a weapon of truth, pushing back with legal force, with facts, with the unshakable confidence of someone who has fought for every inch of her career, every courtroom victory, every legislative win, every late night studying for the bar, and every long hour representing clients who had no voice. And so this isn't just about two women clashing in the spotlight. This is about power dynamics, about the invisible weight carried by women of color in professional spaces, about the double standards of how they are spoken to, spoken about, and silenced when they speak back, because what Melania Trump did in that moment on live television was not accidental, it was deliberate, calculated, and laced with the kind of language that carries centuries of injustice. It was the echo of every boardroom whisper, every classroom doubt, every media smear that tries to suggest that black women are out of place, that they only succeed because someone let them in, and Jasmine knew exactly what that comment meant, and she knew what it meant for every little girl watching who dreams of holding power without apology, and so she chose not to respond in the heat of the moment, because silence, when strategic, is not weakness. It is the sharpening of the sword, and the next day, that sword came down hard in the form of a lawsuit that did not ask for an apology but demanded a reckoning, and when her legal team stood before the press and outlined the claims of slander, reputational harm, and emotional distress, they didn't just cite the broadcast, they unpacked the layers of history that have made comments like Melania's both common and unchallenged in political spaces. They brought forward not just Jasmine's credentials, but the repeated patterns of attempts to diminish her accomplishments, not just from Melania but from an entire segment of political commentary that bristles at the idea of a black woman being brilliant, bold, and beyond their control. And this case, as it progressed, forced the media to take a hard look at its own complicity, because suddenly, networks were replaying the clip, anchors were apologizing for letting it air without immediate pushback, and media watchdogs began raising real questions about who is given space to speak and who is given space to insult, and still Jasmine stood firm, unbothered by the backlash, unafraid of the noise, because her goal was never to gain sympathy. It was to set a precedent, that if you speak recklessly about a public figure, especially in a way that weaponizes race and gender, there are consequences, and for many people across the country, especially black professionals who have navigated the same subtle aggressions, this case became personal. It became about more than just what Melania said. It became about everything people have heard whispered behind their backs. Every promotion questioned, every achievement downplayed, and that's why. Support flooded in from all directions, not because Jasmine asked for it, but because people saw in her a reflection of themselves. Tired of being silenced, ready to fight back, and capable of doing so with fire and finesse, and when Donald Trump, unsurprisingly, entered the conversation with a barrage of online insults, trying to belittle her as just another angry Democrat, Jasmine responded not with tweets but with truth, posting her law school accolades, her courtroom wins, her legislative impact, reminding the world that she is not here by accident but by excellence, and the courtroom became a symbolic battleground. With the judge's decision to allow the case to proceed standing as a validation that even words spoken in passing, even comments wrapped in a smile, can carry the power to harm, and must be held to account, and while the legal outcome remains uncertain, the cultural outcome is already clear. Jasmine Crockett has shifted the conversation, made it impossible to dismiss, forced the nation to look in the mirror and ask, who gets to rise, who gets to speak, and who gets to insult without consequence? And the answer, thanks to her courage, is beginning to change.